And we're back. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Modern Mission Podcast. This is episode 147, and not much is going on in the NFL. So it's gonna be a short and sweet episode, but we got a couple interesting topics that came up. Korshan, before we get any further, how are you doing? What's going on with you this week?
Uh, Doing good, chilling, I guess. But yeah, nothing too hectic. Might go to a trivia night tonight with my sister, so we'll
Ooh,
see. Maybe, yeah. I don't
what's
know.
your what's your ideal topic for trivia?
Ideal topic. I mean, like low key, probably football. 'Cause that's probably what I know
It's
the
almost
most
like we talk
about.
about it every week, huh?
Yeah, you know. Uh, I don't know. Maybe like Age of Empires or something. I don't know, something really weird and niche. But no,
I
yeah.
mean, I hear you. There was a one question where there's like a trivia night I do with my coworkers, and
Hmm.
one of the questions was talking about like, oh, which former NFL player like hosted the Good Morning America show, and I'm like,
Hmm.
all those years of football. Let me just say, Michael Strahan, baby. So
Oh.
I was really excited when that question came up, and I was like, I got
Hmm.
one question in trivia. The rest of them don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Glad things are going well. We'll
Hmm.
start with a major trade. George Pickens
Hmm.
ends up getting traded from the Pittsburgh Steelers to Dallas Cowboys. Dallas finally makes a move at receiver. Um, we were projecting it was going to be Matthew Golden. They ended up going with Tyler Booker in the draft. So a lot of people were questioning why the Cowboys do that. Well, they quickly dissuaded any thoughts of that. So the details of the trade are the Cowboys get George Pickens and they get a 2027 sixth-round pick. They trade away a 2026 third-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not going to beat the Amari Cooper trade for a fifth-round pick straight up, but at the time, but I like this move for the Cowboys end. You don't really give up
Hmm.
much. Top 100 pick maybe for next year, but
Hmm.
um, George Pickens is really great situation for them. Talk me through what do you think for this move on both sides?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that this trade happened makes me think that this was probably discussed a decent bit during draft time. Because obviously, there's the whole talk of like George Pickens is on the trade block, and that kind of happened right around the start of the draft, or like a couple days before the actual draft happened. So I envision what had happened was like the Cowboys were in talks pretty early on then, and they pretty much had general ideas of like what they wanted to give up and get in return for this pick. Similar, I think, with the Steelers, and so that's why the Cowboys are so confidently able to go offensive lineman with that first pick of theirs, which I think is a smart pick of them, because I think you get your first round O lineman, and then using a future third, pretty much you're getting that wide receiver that you hoped to be across from CeeDee Lamb, and so you get your guys there, um, without having to use high draft capital on another wide receiver, which I think is smart for them. On the Steelers side, I mean, I think this is decent enough compensation. A third and a fifth, giving up a sixth. And so, I mean, overall, I mean, it would have been fun to see Pickens with DK Metcalf together on the Steelers, but fortunately, that fun ride has come quickly to an end. Um, but also, it's like just looking at the Steelers quarterback situation, it'd be tough for whoever's at quarterback to be able to feed, I think, all the offensive weapons here and keep everybody happy. And so it's like even if it's like you keep Pickens to build for the future, which I think would have been somewhat nicer. I think one of either Pickens or DK Metcalf get annoyed with the lack of targets, and so now trading one of them away allows basically whoever starts at quarterback to force feed DK Metcalf, and then use Matt Fryermuth as like the safety option. Same with Jalen Warren and whoever they have behind there.
Yeah, really like that analysis. I think the big thing too is I love how you mentioned how one of DK or George will get like upset if targets don't go their way. You saw that a lot with Pickens last season, where he would just like if he knew he wasn't getting the ball, he wouldn't run his routes hard enough.
Mhm.
And the issue with that from a football standpoint is you think about 11 guys on the field, right? And then like 2 others at least are running routes. And if you have like something like 4 verticals called, you need everybody to run that route as equally as hard because the defense is going to dictate where the ball is going. And
Mhm.
defenses would kind of pick up on it. I know like one interception Justin Reed had, like his responsibility was to kind of shade over the top of the cornerback as safety. But because Pickens didn't run his route hard, he's like, okay, I trust my cornerback to guard him. I'm just gonna cheat on the underneath crosser, and that's the kind of problems you run into. If like all 11 guys, and one of them is not playing hard enough, that's a
Mhm.
big issue. So
Yeah.
the Cowboys have a big challenge. Make no mistake, in trying to get the most out of Pickens.
Mhm.
Now, I will say this: I love this for the dynamic of the Cowboys offense. Because if you look at, there was like a heat map going around on Twitter and some articles I was reading of like how CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens win. And
Mhm.
Pickens tends to win to the boundary, which kind of fits his archetype as a player. Whereas like
Mhm.
Lamb wins everywhere, but he wins the most like close to the line of scrimmage or coming from the slot position.
Mhm.
So from a spacing perspective, this works out great for both players. And
Mhm.
Dak Prescott's never really had a guy like this since Des Bryant. And when Des Bryant was on the Cowboys, Dak was just a rookie. He was like a baby. So like he
Mhm.
hadn't fully realized his talents yet. Um, Still performing
Mhm.
admirably well for a rookie. But you think about him now, 10 years into the league,
Mhm.
he's never had a guy like George Pickens. And I think the deep ball is going to unlock some new things with Dak, which is kind of crazy to say because he's had MVP caliber seasons very
Mhm.
recently. So um, I love this move for like Dak and then how like CD and Pickens can work together and like help each other out. Like Pickens would get double as the best receiver on the Steelers, and now it's
Mhm.
going to be Lamb that's going to get doubled, which opens up things for Pickens or vice versa. Like it's going to
Mhm.
be very hard to double one or the other, and I think the Cowboys made a huge deal by making this happen, especially for cheap too, given like the behavioral issues with Pickens,
Mhm.
even though
Yeah.
Tomlin doesn't want to admit it.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and then from the Cowboys side, I mean, like you said, we've seen Dak at that MVP caliber of play, and so just we know that Dak can sustain multiple, high yardage receivers, and so I mean, I presume or assume that CeeDee Lamb will still get a bulk of the targets and more yards than George Pickens, but like I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them hitting that 1,000 yard mark, uh, and both of them being happy with that.
Yeah, and plus Pickens is going into a contract year, so
Hmm.
Dallas doesn't lose anything by making this move except the top 100 pick next year. I think it's worth it.
Hmm.
I think the thing for me that stands out with Pickens that he has to prove himself on is effort level. I
Hmm.
definitely think in a new spot, this is something he's going to have to work on. Um, with the Cowboys,
Hmm.
not only in his route running, but as a run blocker, because you saw the Cowboys go back to the well on offensive linemen. They want to be a physical running the ball team. They want to get back to that when they're investing like ever since 10 years ago, first round picks on every offensive lineman they can get their hands on. They're trying to go back to that identity. Well,
Hmm.
if you do that, then a wide receiver's got a blocked as well.
Hmm.
So you open things up for Javonte Williams, your other backs that you have in that room. Like that's going to be really important. So they're going to need to get that out of him.
Hmm.
And if he does all the right things, he's getting paid, baby.
Yeah, and like another thing too is like this is, I mean, despite how short his career's been, this is the first time I think we can say George Pickens had like a quarterback that can genuinely go through his reads.
Like
And so it's like,
this is the best quarterback he's had in his career.
yeah, and so it's like in the past, obviously, it's like a clear. It's easier to give up, I guess, if you know the ball's not coming your way. But like in a situation with Dak Prescott, as much as we clown on him, he's the guy that if CD isn't open or the first read isn't open, he's the type of player that can look across the field throughout his reads and see George Pickens is open. And so it's like if George wants to hit that 1,000 yard marker, I think that just that effort, at least especially in the receiving game, where he can be a valuable like second, third read in the progression of his vision, is going to be super important.
Yep.
Agreed. Don't have much to add. So,
Mhm.
yeah, exciting news for the Cowboys. We were just we've been complaining about them in
Mhm.
free agency. How come they're not been making moves and stuff like that? And it seems like within the span of like 2 weeks,
Yeah.
everything changes. So, um, if you're a Cowboys fan, definitely got to be excited about this move. Um, transitioning to some little sad news. Depends on how you feel about him, but Derek Carr retires after 11 seasons. So the
Mhm.
reason why is he had a labrum tear in his right shoulder, and based on like doctor feedback and team officials, like it was degenerating, like by his
Mhm.
rotator cuff. So whenever you have that going on, that's going to affect your ability to throw the ball.
Mhm.
Obviously, he's a very controversial player among the Raiders and like the Saints, given how his career went down towards the end.
Mhm.
Um, talk me through what Derek Carr means, like what his career journey has meant, and like what are your takeaways just like watching him play?
Um. Yeah. I mean, he he had an impressive-ish career. Like I think I saw some stats where it's like it's like a good and a bad one where it's just like having X amount of like touchdowns or like yards thrown without having like a playoff win, and like he's on that list or whatever. And so it's like he's played good enough to have this like longevity as a starter and like continuously be a starter in the NFL. Um, but it just like whether it be like his own inability or just like the team in general, like they just haven't been able to form that many winning teams. Obviously, like there's like the 2016 Raiders, which kind of had that weird generational run for the Raiders of being relevant for that season. um, but yeah, I think it's like if you, I saw like this other stat. There's a lot of Derek Carr stats. Obviously, because he retired, but it was like showing uh, who had like the most losses based off like amount of seasons in the league or whatever. And like the first five, it's like David Carr, and then like four of the next five is like Derek Carr or something. So it's like the Carrs have some of the most like most losing quarterbacks pretty much that have any type of longevity in the league, which is kind of sad, but like yeah. But from what I heard from Saints fans, I think most of them are pretty happy. I mean, they have no quarterback, which kind of sucks right now. Like Taysom Hill is arguably the best quarterback on that roster for some reason.
Do not give me
But
Tyler Shaw slander right now on this podcast.
yeah, but yeah, I think a big thing. I think what most Saints fans are happy about is that Derek Carr's not going to be throwing hospital balls to his receivers anymore. Because I think that was the big issue. I mean, maybe it happened a decent amount in Oakland or in Vegas now, or with the Raiders. But like it especially was kind of an issue, especially with Chris Olave, where like he would just get absolutely rocked.
Michael Thomas too.
Mhm. And so it's like we'll see how the quarterback situation shapes up, but like that's hopefully going to be less of an issue. So I think if Derek Carr played this season, we'd probably see an early retirement out of Chris Olave instead, which obviously would suck because he's way younger and has a lot of potential. But yeah.
Yeah, you brought up the 2016 season. Like for being a second round pick in the
Mm-hmm.
2014 draft, like I think he's had a really impressive career.
Mm-hmm.
Um, although like it sucked that he fractured his fibula that year.
Mm-hmm.
Like because remember he fractured at week 16 of the season,
Yeah.
which was the second last game of the season back when they had
Mm-hmm.
like 17 weeks. And that caused the Raiders to lose the playoff. Who knows what happens that time? And then like
Mm-hmm.
he had 3 straight seasons with like 4,000 yards and like less than 10 interceptions or 10 interceptions or fewer. But I think his willingness to not take chances and wanting to please the coaches by taking checkdowns like really angered the fan base. Whereas like we're trying to win the game, take some chances.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny you brought up the Saints because now he's just taking too many chances with the ball where he's putting his receivers in harm's way. So it got to one of those situations where it's like trying to please everybody and you really can't
Mm-hmm.
as a quarterback. But yeah, I mean, he was never the greatest talented player,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say like when, especially early in his career, he had losing potential and um,
for however you feel about him, he's first in franchise history for the Raiders in passing yards and touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
So that is pretty impressive. I think it's a great career arc considering he was picked in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of wish he stayed in 2016 and like not
Yeah.
got hurt so you could get that playoff victory though, because
Mhm.
that's insane.
Yeah. But in a way too, I think, I mean, just on like the Saints financial side as well, just him retiring helps, I think, a decent bit with that cap space. I don't know how much they were slated to pay him, like however the rest of the contract was, but obviously that puts some ease on some of like that roster tightness that they keep on creating for themselves. So hopefully, it's like they're able to build their roster normal. Obviously, they're still in not the greatest of situations cap wise, I think, but
Would
with
you
how
tank for Arch?
uh potentially, I mean, like, I feel like isn't like the quarterback class just in general supposed to be a lot better next season? So it's
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh yeah.
and so it's like even if you don't get Arch necessarily, like I think there are other guys who should be valuable NFL starters going into next or coming up into next season. And so it's not like all their eggs in one basket. And especially, I don't know, because they have like a lot of older players. And so it becomes a situation of like, well, like, it's not really like you're developing a lot of your young talent, but then also old players or older players definitely aren't the types to want to tank because it's like, well, I'm playing for my next contract. And so it's tricky, but I think I think they'll probably suck just because of the quarterback situation, regardless. But yeah, if they can
They
get
still
our
have
nice, but
they still have Alvin Kamara, right? So it's
yeah,
like,
he's like
what
30.
happens with him? Like,
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, your offensive star Alvin Kamara is 30. Uh, I mean, you have like Jawan Johnson at tight end, who's like
you're
mid
wasting
20s.
years of like Olave. Like that's just it's very difficult
Mhm.
to sell me on like Tyler Shell versus Spencer Rattler, like
Yeah.
leading them through the season. So I think if you're them,
Hmm.
I would just build around like what you have of the team, just plan for the future and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And then like I'm not having very high expectations on the Saints this season.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
I think with the moves Carolina's made, like Tampa Bay continues to crush it in the draft, and then you got the Falcons, who I'm really high on Penix and what they're trying to
Hmm.
do this season. I do not see a scenario where the Saints finish higher than second in the
Yeah.
division.
Yeah. Maybe Tyler Show, he has a historic rookie season.
He
Um,
is experienced, but there's not much around talent around besides Kamara and Olave for him to really
uh-huh. Yeah.
excel.
So it'll be tough. Yeah, but I don't really have super high expectations. Maybe they're the surprise team this year, but I have more doubts than anything. But yeah.
100%. A lot of doubts on the Vikings quarterback plans all
Hmm.
offseason. You have options of Sam Darnold or Aaron Rodgers. They choose neither. They choose JJ McCarthy. So
Hmm.
that's saying, um, what do you think you're going to expect out of JJ McCarthy? Does he have a ceiling as high as Mahomes, like first year starting, given that the Vikings were going to let go of Sam Darnold and not pursue Aaron Rodgers
Hmm.
in order to really try to pay off their investment in JJ?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, even if he doesn't match the play of Sam Darnold last year, I mean, like, if he leads them to at least like being competitive throughout the season, I think that's a huge win for them. But like, they just have a really well built team for JJ McCarthy, um, which is kind of like the big plus for him right now. It's just like, I mean, like, because there's arguably, I feel like a lot of question marks around Sam Darnold still, especially just like the fact that the Seahawks have a weaker offensive line and like he is not that great at like dealing with pressure. And so it's like a strength of that Vikings was just the fact that they have good offensive linemen, plus just the skill positions all around are pretty stacked as well, which made, Sam Darnold could really just give it to whoever and a play's probably being made. Because I mean, like what you have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison is your 1-2, T.J. Hawkinson, despite him coming back later in the season, like that's your tight end, and then at the running back position, you got Aaron Jones, who like balled out a decent chunk last season too. So it's like no matter which direction you look, you got a pretty nice playmaker there. And so like obviously there's gonna be high expectations for McCarthy, and the fact that like Vikings fans and I think the ownership, like all the coaching and all that, are going to expect them to be competitive and in that playoff hunt this season. But obviously, like we really don't know anything about JJ McCarthy at the NFL level. I mean, he's been able to sit and watch the game, which I think is nice, but obviously lack of practices and just everything like that make it tricky. So it's really just a whole. We don't know how he's going to do. I wasn't the biggest fan of him going into the draft last season as well. I mean, like I figured he's going to get a first round draft, or he's going to be drafted in the first, but like amongst the quarterbacks, he was not amongst my top favorites. Like I think I like Penix more than McCarthy. Almost maybe like it was like between Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy is kind of like my.
That was the debate, and there were like teams that were saying, "Oh, should JJ McCarthy go number 3 overall?" And it's like, I don't know about that. That is just there was a lot of speculation in the draft. I will say this: there are like C.J. Stroud, Jaden Daniels. Sorry, I'm thinking of like the Minnesota Timberwolves forward when I'm thinking of the Washington QB. My bad. Sorry, Jaden's. So you have those 2 quarterbacks, and then you have Bo Nix. All 3 of those quarterbacks are kind of like outliers in like their first season. They're playing. There was a list from The Athletic that kind of outlined like a list of people who excel their first year. But I think what was interesting was 3 different quarterbacks who are veterans or retired at this point, and their setups. They're really similar to like what JJ McCarthy has in Minnesota. Just talked about Dak Prescott with the George Pickens trade. And how he had Des Bryant. Well, he also had Jason Witten. And then in the same draft class, he had the number 1 overall pick, Ezekiel Elliott, who had 1,600 yards his first season and 15 touchdowns. And then 3 of his offensive linemen got Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, Zach Martin, all pro honors. Stacked offense. And I get it. They got Jason Witten at the time, but I mean, that is a great situation for a quarterback to play in. And Roethlisberger, Mr. 13-0 first season. He was handing the ball off to Jerome Bettis, had Hines Ward, Plaxico Burress, and then like great offensive linemen as well. Like at least 2 of them are all pros, like Alan Faneca and then Jeff Hardings from what I'm reading. I think if he can play like Deshaun Watson, that's a win. His rookie season. Remember his rookie season, tore his ACL in the middle of it, but like rookie Deshaun Watson was balling out. I remember watching and I was like, man, if we only had him on the Bears, because I wanted the Bears to pick him that year. I'm not going to pretend like I wanted Mahomes in that draft class when that happened. I wanted Watson, but he had DeAndre Hopkins in the safety valve there, and Bill O'Brien, who was a great offensive coach. 11-5, lost in the wild card round. But if I'm JJ McCarthy, if I play on Deshaun Watson's levels first season, I call that a win. I don't think anybody can match what Mahomes did and like trying to go toe to toe with Tom Brady first season on the job. That's not the expectation. But I think there are success stories where you have the Roethlisberger, Prescott, Watson, where you can lean off of. And I recommend like watching the tape on those guys and see how do you manage all these talents you have around you, still be a productive quarterback.
Yeah. So I mean, like all the things that we need to see, at least from the team side, is 100% there for JJ McCarthy, which I feel like it's like a good thing and a scary thing, just because we know there's all this help there for McCarthy. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of really high expectations. But the good thing I think too is the fact that they really didn't bring any competitive talent at the quarterback position, like make it so that when McCarthy has like a bad game or two, it's not going to be easy to just to like bench him because I think if you bring in Aaron Rodgers even as like a bridge backup ish mix, or you have like Sam Darnold there, it's going to be a lot of McCarthy has maybe 2 bad games, and all of a sudden the fans are going to be like, hey, bring back put Sam Darnold in as starter, or like, hey, we want Rodgers in at starter, and that like it kind of helps alleviate some of that. But the other thing that I was also thinking was just the fact that I feel like from what we've seen so far from the rest of the quarterbacks in this class is it seems like they're almost all going to be hits. Like they all, in whatever capacity that they played last season, I felt like all the rookie quarterbacks played pretty good football. And so just the fact that like statistically, you're like, I'm not like, it's hard. It's unlikely. I'm not saying that like that's how actually JJ McCarthy will go, but statistically having all these first round quarterbacks hit, um, is pretty crazy to see. And so I feel like that's like another stressor that you can add on to JJ McCarthy of just being like,
Right.
hey, all these quarterbacks have hit. Statistically, it feels unlikely that every first round quarterback hits from that class. But at the same time, I mean, like, you can't just put the base stat of like not every quarterback in the first round hits. Because I mean, we look at the what 20 is it the 21 or 22 class with Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, and Mac Jones. Like,
I was on the record. I think I mentioned that I was like super high on Trey Lance and Justin Fields in that class. And I was like, wow, this is a stacked class. And everybody in the media was obsessing over this too.
mm-hmm.
And then look how that turned out. I agree with you to some respect. I don't have many concerns with the quarterbacks from last year's draft class,
Mm-hmm.
except maybe JJ and like Drake May. Just
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't seen it enough. Even though Caleb's situation hasn't been ideal, I think I've
Mm-hmm.
seen enough from him, from his ability wise, where I'm like confident that he will improve and the team will get better.
Mm-hmm.
But and I feel the same way about Bo Nix, Penix, and obviously Jaden Daniels. But I think those two quarterbacks would be the questions. But for the most part, you're 100% right. If like 66% of the quarterbacks in the first round are like really, really good, that's a great draft class in itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then like I feel if like McCarthy hits and then all of a sudden we're seeing like all 6 first round quarterbacks end up being hits on this class, like that's a generational class we're talking about in terms of quarterback
Yeah.
play. Where I feel like this bunch of 6 guys, if they live up to kind of the expectations we've seen from last season, it's of the caliber I think we've seen of like the Peyton Manning, Eli Manning, Brady, Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees stack of like rivalry of like quarterbacks around the same age, of just like being kind of the superstars of the league for 15 years. And I feel like this class that we have here has similar potential to that, which I think is really exciting.
That would be insane. Like imagine like all the talk right now is Burrow, Allen, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and like yeah. Like imagine that discussion, and then you see all these crafts of new quarterbacks. That's a crazy thing to think about. Where you got like suddenly half the league is just like vying for the Super Bowl because their quarterback is just superhero. So that is a crazy. Wow, of course, and you just made me super excited to see what's going to happen this season. As if
Yeah.
I wasn't already.
But yeah, so it's exciting, and I'm not saying that like obviously the stats can be scary, but you can't just put that as a blanket statement over all these quarterbacks just
Right.
because then
Right.
we haven't seen what JJ McCarthy can do. He's in pretty much the perfect optimal situation, I think. And almost any rookie quarterback could be. There's not a lot of other teams that I think I'd rather have a rookie quarterback step into than JJ McCarthy with the Vikings. And so
He's in a better situation than Cam Boyd is. That's for sure.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think this. I mean, I imagine he has a pretty good season. Again, nothing has shown me that he shouldn't have a good season this year. So it'll be exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about the quarterbacks, it's like I think teams are getting smarter about like how do we create the situation where they can be good.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're starting to see that now. The Saints are doing that, but I question their choice of quarterbacks because they haven't drafted a really good quarterback. Remember, Drew Brees is not drafted. They traded
they got him in the trade via the Chargers.
Hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, that's a doozy. But
Hmm.
other than that, like, I mean, I think teams are realizing that, like, if we're picking really high in the draft, it's probably not because we have a great team around us. It's
Hmm.
probably because our team sucks, and the quarterback walking in is probably isn't going to change that overnight. So,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
any other things to add about Mr. JJ?
Nope.
All right, so it looks like it's dynasty stonks for all the quarterbacks of last year. So if you don't
Hmm.
have them, get them.
Hmm.
Alrighty, guys, that will do it for us. You can follow us on our Instagram channel at amon.a.mission. YouTube channel is Amon Mission. Um, give us all the support we need. We appreciate it a ton. You guys take care. We're probably going to be off next week to enjoy some of the NFL offseason, but we'll be right back with our summer series of each division. Going for this third year in a row. You won't want to miss it at all. But until then, see you guys later and take it easy.
Peace.